my contribution in Bitcoin project, one is Bitcoin, which is the biggest framework for developing on Bitcoin with .NET technologies. And the book I wrote that is called Blockchain Programming in C# that is free. There is a, you can Google it, Blockchain Programming in C#, you'll find my site, it's free. I also very briefly collaborate on Bitcoin Core sometime, but I'm not still full time on that. And today I wanted to present you what I think is the most important thing that is going on this year in Bitcoin, and that will impact Bitcoin for the following years. And I'm not talking about governance, I'm not talking about the block size. Both of them are very irrelevant compared to what is coming. So basically what is coming is called up-check sequence verify. So yeah, most of people does not really understand what it is, so they disregard it, but it's very important thing that like I will explain to you. And segregated witnesses, which is at the same time a way to bump a little bit the block size, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that it fixes malleability attacks. And we'll see why it's important for scaling Bitcoin up to the next level. So with both of these improvements, we will talk about how to build what we call a payment channel. And the payment channel is really the base of what we follow, of what we call the Lightning Network and Payment Hub, which is a way to scale Bitcoin at Visa scale. And when I say for 2,000 transactions every second with a very small block size. Right now, with Lightning Network, like I would tell you, we can support approximately 8 million persons with 1 megabyte block. And it's irrelevant about how many transactions they need. So if there is 8 million persons, there can be 1 billion transactions, it will work. I'll explain how exactly it is possible. So right now, I don't know, does Japan or the US know about Asterix? It's a French comic.
I thought it's Belgian.
It's no. Belgium? Ah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's Belgium. You're right. You're right. So it's a Belgian comic where the France that we call the Gaul in long times ago, 50 years before Christ. It's a small village of citizens that are a little not very organized, and they're the only village left of French people that try to resist the Roman Empire invasion of France. But the problem is that every day they fight because there is the smith of the village and the seller of fish that got into a dispute because the smith is telling to the seller that the fish smell bad. So it always degenerates into a big fight in the village. And basically it's a little bit how I picture the 2 megabytes debate right now. It's only a smith and the fish seller that are fighting because the fish is smelling bad. So not a big deal. It's a big fight, but I think it's very petty comparing to what is coming next. What is coming next is a bit more like that, where so the story of this village, the only reason why this small village resists is because they have the recipe to do a magical potion, and when they drink this potion, they become very strong. And the best thing they like to do when they are very strong is to kick ass of Roman empires. So I think Bitcoin is a little bit like that, and Lightning Network, I think it's a bit like the magical potion that the Bitcoin community will drink to kick ass of the Roman Empire. So first, what you need to understand about this presentation is that Bitcoin does not scale, but Bitcoin scale. There is a small difference in these two sentences, which is the small b. And it is important because Bitcoin with a big B means Bitcoin is a network. The network has some problem of capacity because when you transfer a transaction, basically your transaction is transferred to all around the world. And if you want to make your own Bitcoin service, then you need to receive this transaction. So you need a minimal amount of bandwidth, for example. You need storage, you need lots of stuff, and it does not really scale. At 1 megabyte, we don't have any problem. At 2 megabytes, no, I don't think it's some problem, but as we go higher, there will be pressure that will kick nodes out of the network, and then will become more centralized. And even if we put 10 megabytes, 20 megabytes, we'll always hit the problem that we cannot scale at the Visa level, and we still have the centralization problem. So Bitcoin with a big B doesn't scale, but Bitcoin, the currency, is scaling, and this is what I will explain you with what you call the Lightning Network. Lightning Network is about transferring Bitcoin. It's not another funny currency. It's really Bitcoin that we are transferring at large scale, at Visa scale. So if there is a thing to remind about this presentation, it's really that Bitcoin with a big B doesn't scale. Bitcoin with a small b scale. In this presentation, I will often mention what I call off-chain payments. And I want to be very clear about what off-chain means. Off-chain means that if you transfer Bitcoin from Bob to Jim through some service, and the service never has to get the Bitcoin, doesn't keep the Bitcoin for you, then it's called an off-chain transfer of Bitcoin. If you're in the case, for example, of Coinbase, where you have your Coinbase account on the exchange and you send Bitcoin to another person that also have an account on the exchange, this is not off-chain. This is called on custody, because Coinbase owns your Bitcoin and you're just passing around funny money, IOU. So I make a very distinct terminology: off-chain, on custody. Yeah.
ちょっと説明したいんですけど、例えばチェンジティップとかコインベースとかで、なんていうんですか、オフチェーンってトランザクションって自分間違って言ってたんですけど、それは IOU を動かしてるだけで、それはオンカスティディですと。つまり、そのチェンジティップだったりコインベースだったりが預かったビットコインをトランザクトしていますと。それがオンカスティディってやつでして、オフチェーンっていうのは本当のオフチェーンで、なんていうんですか、これは TTP、トラステッドサードパーティーがやり取りしてますと。だけど、これはトラステッドサードパーティーがやり取りしてない、本当の意味でのオフチェーンっていうのはこっちですと。そういう
オフチェーンっていうのは要するに、トランザクションはメイクするけど、not ブロードキャストってことですか？どういう意味？
オフチェーンっていうのがペイメントチャンネルっていうやつで、そのオンカステディって言ってるのが我々がよく自分が間違ってオフチェーントランザクションって言ってたコインベースだったりチェンジティップだったりがビットコイン IOU をやり取りしてるやつですと。ところがこのオフチェーンっていうやつは新しい今開発中のプロトコルにより実現される真のオフチェーントランザクションで、それによってライトニングネットワークだったり、スケールする方向でのやり取りができるようになりますと。そのためのそのプロトコルとして OPCSV だったり、Segregated Witness なのか、両方なのか OPCSV なのかちょっとわかんないんですけど、その辺が今日の主な話で、それは2メガバイトのハードフォークとかそっちよりずっと重要で、ニコラはそのビットコインコアとずっと話していて、その非常に重要な2つのそのプロトコルの変更について今日語ってるんです。
So,
右側はデータベースのやり取りですよね。
コインベースが持っているデータベース上の
そうです。
マイスケールがとかでこの資格を決めて、
はい。
で、こっちの場合は のブロックチェーンで本当にブロックチェーンでP2P でやってる。
はい。
So is the difference? I have an easy way to explain the difference between both. Is that if this explodes, you still own Bitcoin. If this won't explode, you own monopoly money. So you can you translate?
これもしこのコインベースだったり、マウントボックスもそうなんですけど、マウントボックス、コインベース、チェンジティップがもしその失敗すると、我々のビットコインなくなるわけですね。なぜならば、ここに信任してて、ここに預けてたトランザクションなので。だけど、こちらは、我々がやっぱプライベートキー持ってるんですよ。なので、これはプライベートキーを預けたやり取りですと。で、その預けた先のデータベースのやり取りで、こちらのオフチェーンというのは、プライベートキー我々が持って、真の意味でのオフチェーン取引ですと。
If you have any question, don't hesitate to enter me anytime.
左のやつは、後でブロックチェーンが生産されるようなトランザクションを直接個人宛てに送ってる。
そのペイメントチャンネルっていうのは、そのオフチェーンでやれますと。
オフチェーンは、トランザクションを作るんですけど、最終的にブロードキャストはまだしなくて、最後に確定みたいなことをされますと。だから、その間の勘定はなんかオフチェーンでやるんですけども、結局ビットコインのブロックチェーンに載せるパターンです。都度ブロードキャストしないっていう意味と捉えていただくのがいいと。
So, I think the simplest way to explain the difference is really if something explodes in the middle, do you lose money or not? If not, it's off chain. If you can lose money, it's on its own custody. It's really the most simplest explanation on what the difference between both, I think. So yeah, make the difference because it can save your money, your life, but your money.
People have to manage their private.
Yes.
In Coinbase, so user can still only manage a password.
Yes.
It's totally different.
Well, yes, it's in one case you handle the security, you give the security aspect to Coinbase, and on the other side you keep it yourself. It's true that there is some danger that you mishandle something yourself and lose your money with that. But with Coinbase, there is also other possibility. Maybe you can get scammed because of a phishing attack. There's lots of different possibility where you can also lose money. Coinbase can go under. Yeah. So it's really about handling Bitcoin by yourself is not so complicated, but you have a point where people need to be explained about that still. So both have a degree of danger, but if you know what you're doing, then this is definitely most dangerous. Because, for example, Coinbase can freeze your account if you see that you make a transfer to a service it doesn't agree. For example, if you're betting and the US say no betting with Bitcoin, then Coinbase will just freeze your money. They will say you are not stolen, but in reality, if you cannot withdraw your Bitcoin, they just stole you. So even if it's legal, they get your money. So it's really important, I think, to keep our own key. So when I say off-chain, it's about that. And today I will speak about that.
It's you're responsible for yourself.
Yes, right. It's you are responsible for your own key. So I will approach that with a different layer. The first layer that will allow us to do off-chain payments is at the Bitcoin protocol layer. Like I said, two new things: off-check second verify. We extend segregated witness. Segregated witness also have more detail, but I will not go too deep into that. Only on what interests us in the scaling thing. The layer just above these two is called a bidirectional. So bidirectional payment channel is two people. They make a channel between themselves, and then they can transfer Bitcoin to one another without hitting the blockchain. So it's one-to-one Bitcoin exchange without using the blockchain. I will explain that because it's sort of the building block for what's come above it. Above it is what we call Payment Hub and Lightning Network. So Payment Hub in practice, I don't think it will really be used in the future, except in the correct coin space, but I will not go too much into that. But it's very important to understand the concept that's push us to the Lightning Network design. So I will explain that as well. It's important to know also that bidirectional payment channel, in theory, are doable now with object block time verify. It's another operator that I will briefly talk, but there is some problem into it that if I have time to go on it, I will explain more. But basically, this presentation is what if we have object sequence verify and SegWit, then we can build that, then we can build that. There was a presentation at the Hong Kong Scaling Bitcoin conference about the scalability of Bitcoin. If we have object sequence verify and segregated witness. During the presentation, there was a, so I put the link, there is a transcript to this presentation. And the point is that if we have 1 megabyte block, then we can scale Bitcoin to approximately 8 million users, knowing that the 50% of the network only is using payment channels. So it means, and so it's also irrespective of the number of transactions. There can be, I don't know, 1 billion transactions, it would still be possible. So important thing is this 8 million users. Yes.
So the open and closes are on chain.
Yes. Okay. Opening a channel and closing a channel is both one transaction. You can also bundle an opening with a closing, but it's I will not explain that.
Why is it one transaction? Because it's time locked?
I will explain it
Okay.
later because I will go into the details just after. So yeah, with 1 megabyte block. If we have 2 megabyte block, basically what will happen if we have segregated witness? So we will be around 16 million people. If we have the next big limit will be maybe 32 megabytes per block. So if we have 32, we can also scale. So that's multiplied by 32. It's a lot of people that are coming. And once again, it's irrespective about the number of transactions, so they can have more transactions. So first, let's talk about the first layer, because if that comes in, then we can build the rest. The rest is only technical details that need to be implemented, but this need to be merged into Bitcoin. So object sequence verify has been merged, I think, 1 or 2 weeks ago, something like that, in the core source code. So it will probably come in the next release. Segregated witness, but will come out likely this year. So the principle of object sequence verify is to add a condition to spend your coin that is fail the script if the age of this coin is below a certain threshold. So where X is in block count or in a time span. So if you want to say, for example, my coin needs to have at least 1 day, you can say, okay, it's below 1 day, or you can say it's below 144 block, because 144 block is 1 day concurrent. So object sequence verify is that. As an example, imagine that you have a coin with a script pub key inside, and the script pub key has this script. This script lists 2 conditions for spending the coin. First condition, tree object sequence verify. Second condition, Jim sign. So Jim need to sign, and the coin need to be 3 days old. So imagine now that these are different blocks in the blockchain, and imagine that in time you broadcast your Bitcoin at this point. For some reason, the next miner doesn't mine it, the next block doesn't mine it. The third block mine it. But Jim cannot spend it yet because it's 3 here. So Jim, in this case, need to wait 1 block, 2 block, 3 block. By the way, I may have a mistake of off by 1 mistake. I'm not sure, but it's the principle. So it's maybe 1 more or 1 less. I'm not sure exactly. But you need to wait 1, 2, 3, and then at this point, if Jim signs, then you can just spend the coin. Okay. So it's a way to add to ensure that a coin has been mined for a certain period of time before being spent. Yes.
Jim means?
Jim, it's a name, like Bob. Yes.
多分2 of 2 is it 2 of 2 multi-signature?
No, it has nothing to do with 2 or 2 multi-sig. So this one is not a multi-sig. So Jim, it's only a name. It can be. It's a public key. You know, inside your scripted key, you have most likely you have the public key that you need to sign. Well, it's an address in most of the transaction, but you can add the public key to sign, and object sig means that you need the signature of the private key corresponding to this public key. So this script means the coin needs to be 3 years old, and Jim needs to sign.
To be used.
To be used, yes. So to spend the coin that has been mined.
Why this why like this kind of like specification is decided?
You're in the good conference because I will talk about it
Okay.
Just after. These are the first layer that are necessary for the upper layer, which is bidirectional payment channel, and you will see why it's necessary to do that.
So in this case, you have to create 2 transactions on the chain.
No, it's 1 transaction here.
So how does the check sig work then if you don't sign it?
So so this is 1 transaction. Imagine that you receive money from someone who say you cannot spend it unless you wait 3 days. So this is broadcast. It's 1 transaction, and yes, if Jim wants to spend it, then it's another transaction.
Okay.
But he can just spend it only when he really needed to do another payments.
The question: what is the main difference from the check log time verify opcode?
It's a good question because it's my next slide. So there is another operation that exists in Bitcoin that is merged, that is activated since December. That's called check log time verify. It's kind of similar to check sequence verify because the check log time verify means fails if fails the script if the date is below X. So it means that if you have a coin, we will see an example, but if you have a coin, you can say this coin cannot be spent until 2012, for example. Then you can freeze your coin on the blockchain for until a date, a certain date. So it's absolute when check sequence verify is a period of time. this is the date. So as an example, imagine that you have a coin that say 109 of check log time verify. So 109 is the 8th of the block. Okay, so in a only rare case, it will be, I don't know, 400,000, something like that. So imagine that you broadcast your transaction when the date of today is 8/105. Then your transaction gets mined. But even if it's mined, Jim cannot spend it until the date passed. So the date here is 109. So he will be able to spend it, Jim will be able to spend the coin since the date that is specified.
You can decide how many days mine.
So it's during when you do a payment to someone in a Bitcoin transaction. Is there any? So when you make a payment on Bitcoin, you make one transaction where you pull out a coin that is not spent from somewhere, you satisfy the condition, whatever they are, and then you add a new coin that is unspent. And each of those coins, you can decide which condition you want to apply to spend them. So basically, the one who decide what is this script is the one who pay you, who signs this transaction.
So if I'm a miner, I can decide, okay, this coin should be like a free game.
It's not the miner that which decide. It's the person who signs the transaction.
Okay.
So if someone wants to spend his coin, he signs it, then he decides the next condition to spend the outputs. So in most of the time, it's most of payments, it's what we call the P2PKH. So it means that you need the public key plus the signature to spend it. But it can be anything. And this is an example of scripts that can happen. So you will see why it's important, because with that we can craft special kind of transaction that will allow us to scale later. Okay, so once again, the difference, check log time verify is a date in block, in 8, or in dates, like, I don't know, 2012. While check sequence verify is a time span, which starts from the date where the coin is mined. Okay? So one is relative, the other one is absolute. Does it respond to your question? Oishi, what is his name already? Oishi-san?
Oishi desu.
Oh,
I can understand what difference is, but I want to know why the new opcode is needed. Why
That's fine. It's in the next slide. I will explain that. So, because you will say that we need both in practice. But first, I need to explain what is segregated witness. So the idea of segregated witness is kind of easy, but the implication to see is more difficult. But the idea is that the signature of a transaction. So every time you spend a coin, you have to provide the signature as a proof that you own it. The idea of SegWit is to get rid of the signature. I mean, to put the signature out of the calculation of the transaction ID. I will explain later in the next slide. when you do a classic transaction like we are doing now, like for example P2PKH. So P2PKH is when you pay to an address, for example an address you get from, most are P2PK, P2SH, but like for example if you have Bitcoin Core, you want to get paid, you generate an address, you have this kind of transaction. And so when you do a payment with, for example, Bitcoin D, so with the Bitcoin D wallet, you have your transaction, and your transaction have inside the input signature 1, for example, for the spending of the first coin, and for the spending of the second coin, for example, signature 2. And the transaction ID is a hash of all of that. So the thing that Segwit does, basically, is to say, wait, let's try to make it so that signatures are outside of, I will not say it's outside of the transaction, but it's outside of the calculation of the transaction ID. So basically, the signatures get moved from inside the inputs to outside the inputs in another structure we call the witness. And I will show you why it works and why it is a soft fork. But just before, I want to explain you the difference and why this was a big deal, because this kind of thing everybody knows that it was possible to do, but the big news is that it's possible to do with a soft fork. The difference between a soft fork and a hard fork is that a soft fork adds restriction to the rule of what is valid. So, for example, if I need to do a small graph, the difference between, imagine that the black one is the rule before, okay? You are doing a hard, so the black circle is all transaction that is valid. It's a space of all transactions that are valid, for example. If you are doing a soft fork, in fact, a soft fork only adds restriction on what is valid. So, for example, if you do a soft fork, then you can end up here. Okay, it's a restriction. It's an addition of rule of what is valid. And the interesting thing is that since it's a restriction of previous rule, all clients will also accept your transaction. So in fact, nobody except the miners need really to update if it's a soft fork. A hard fork, on the other hand, is a change of rule in Bitcoin where you have some port that is outside the existing rule. So it means that all clients will suddenly start to reject transactions that should be accepted. This means that if users does not update, then they will end up on another fork, on another chain. So that's why hard fork is difficult, because you have to update the whole network. So all the users around the world, all the services, and all the miners and everything. Whereas the soft fork is only on the date of miners. The user don't have to do anything. So it's very easy to do. And I will explain you why it's a soft fork. Because, so this new type of payment is called the pay to witness. So I will not go into the detail of what exactly is the scripts inside it, but it's kind of easy. If you do a P2 witness payments, so you pay to a witness address or to an address for witness, what happens is that you create a transaction and for all nodes, so the all node that did not update it, they will just receive the transaction, but they won't see the signatures. But still, they will accept the transaction. Why will they accept it? Because what the all node will see so imagine the all node get paid by a witness user, for example, someone who updated his webpage with witness, segregated witness. What the user, what the new all node will see is that the script key is to push. A script key is a sort of, I want to remind you that the script key is the conditions to spend a coin. The all node will see the script key to push. So there is no really any kind of operator. And for all node, the signification of the condition, these conditions means that everybody can spend the coin. So basically, if you have a segregated witness wallet and you paid an old user that did not upgrade, the user will still accept your transaction because this transaction without signature for them is valid because this condition is filled. Okay? So for all nodes, when they see this script key, it means no condition for spending the coin. It's satisfied. No signatures. So they will accept the payments. For new node, so the new node who updated to segregated witness will have more data inside the transaction. They will have to witness that data. So they will receive the same payments with the same script key. The script sig, to satisfy the payments, it will still be empty. But the interesting thing is that the witness script, so what is fitted at the end of the transaction here, will have the signature. So all node will just accept payment from witness addresses without any problem. And new node will verify that the signature is attached to the transaction. So it is kind of a soft fork because all nodes don't have to update anything. Is it clear why it's a soft fork? It's always because the all node accepts the new kind of transaction. If it didn't, it would be a hard fork. So once again, the difference between these two is really that all nodes won't see the signatures, but they don't require it anyway. The new node will require the signature for accepting the transaction. So it's a reduction of the space of valid transaction. It's a reduction. Hmm?
I don't know. Both with signature
Yeah.
will be stored in blockchain.
Right. So that's a good point. Your question was this because it's a bit more complicated than that. Does this signature will be stored in the blockchain? The thing is, one of the nice things about segregated witness is also that, in fact, these signatures don't have to be stored. If you have a full node, if you run Bitcoin D, for example, they will still store it because if, for example, a new node joins the network and need to download all the blockchain from the beginning, the new node wants to verify all signatures. So this will be still stored on the blockchain. But you can, if you decide, if you want to run what we call a prune node, which it's a node which runs on a smaller computer, then you can just get rid of the signatures once you have verified them.
So maybe like timing. So for like small computer, it is not necessary to have a signature one.
Right.
And for like big computer, which is like mining.
Right.
So the computer has to become a one.
Right.
How do you solve that?
So it's really, the matter is, do you want to support new user to catch up with the blockchain? Basically, if you have a node at your home, if you want that your node help new user to catch up the blockchain, then in this case, you want to keep the signatures. If you have a node just for privacy reason, or maybe just for your local service that you're developing on, then maybe you don't need to store all the signatures. So in this case, you can say, I run in prune mode and get rid of it. So the impact will be that the blockchain, I don't know what is its size now, but you can have a reduction of something like 40% of the size of the blockchain. Yeah.
It's not into single one, two, or
Which one?
OP become.
Now, op return is still in the output. It doesn't change.
So you can verify.
It's only, the only change is about what we called before inside the input you have the script sig, and the only change is that in the script sig now there will be nothing. There is a for compatibility reason. The first time that SegWit will be deployed, there will be something in the script sig because it will be a P2SH wrapped into a SegWit, but no, SegWit wrapped into P2SH, but it's a bit complicated and it's not necessarily I talk about this particular case. But in the case that import to us, the script sig will be empty. It's the only change really that's matter for us. It will be empty and it will be outside the transaction. And the important thing is that the transaction ID is the hash of that, and not the hash of everything. And this is what fixes malleability. Because if a malicious actor try to change the signature, then it won't change the. You will see why it's important very soon. So these are the base block. So now I explained the first layer. I will explain the second layer, which is bidirectional payment channel. So the principle of a payment channel is kind of easy. Imagine there is Alice and Bob, and they deal a lot with one another. I don't know. We can imagine, for example, that she's a designer and is a boss of this company, and they do a lot of business together. So, for example, she prefers to be paid every day or something, or I don't know, but they do lots of business and lots of different payments. And this decide, instead of broadcasting one transaction every payment, what if we create a payment channel? So to establish a payment channel, basically you have two different parameters. And one is the capacity. The capacity means you have one payment channel. What is the maximum that one side can have at the end of the day? So one Bitcoin capacity, one Bitcoin means that at most, Bob can have one Bitcoin, or Alice can have one Bitcoin. It's the capacity of the payment channel. The second thing is called the revocation period. So the revocation period will say that it's necessary to be bidirectional. I will explain that in the next slide. So for example, 1 day. Basically, when the channel will be closed, everybody will be able to spend what they receive, but the party which closed the channel will need to wait 1 day, or in this example, 1 day. And I will explain why it's very important to do that. How a payment channel works. So this starts to be a bit technically complicated. So how does a payment channel work? How do you establish one? So you agree, you have two things. Agree the revocation period. How it shows. So once they agreed to do the payment channel, they will create the first multi-sig transaction. And in this multi-sig transaction, there will be two inputs, or maybe more, but the point is that Bob spent 0.5 Bitcoin to establish the channel, and Alice spent 0.5 Bitcoin to establish the channel. So they together they block some money to create this channel, and they put it into a multi-signature address. So it means that once it's blocked, you need the approval of Bob and Alice to spend it. So they do this transaction and they keep it for themselves. They don't broadcast it right now. The second thing that needs to be done is to create what we call a commitment transaction. The first commitment of the payment channel. Basically, the first commitment will say this money that got broken. The first commitment will get back 0.5 to Alice and 0.5 to Bob. I will explain more a little bit about this script here. But 0.5, 0.5. So each party will get back their money, can get back their money. If this one gets broadcasted on the network and Bob wants to get back his 0.5 Bitcoin, then you just have to broadcast his transaction. So it's what we call first commitment, and once they have both, they can open the channel. So you need to open the channel to start doing more commitments. So they broadcast this one. So they broadcast it, it gets mined. Okay, they wait some confirmation to be sure it's okay. And these commitments, they don't broadcast it. Alice has this commitment, Bob has this commitment. So they both have a transaction that is not broadcast, that they keep for themselves. But if they want to get out of the channel and get back their money, they can just broadcast it. So you open the channel by broadcasting that. You close the channel by broadcasting one of those. Each party has its own transaction. Alice and Bob have their own transaction. Let's take a look at Alice's commitments. So Alice's commitments, if she broadcasts a transaction, then Bob can pay directly his money. There is no problem. But let's check the output here. The output says that Alice can spend it if she waits 1 day. The 1 day is a revocation period, you remember? But there is another condition that can be used to spend this coin. And the other condition is that Alice, a secret of Alice and a signature of Bob. So this means, basically it means that Bob can also steal Alice's money if he knows these secrets. And you will understand why it's important, because when we want to update that, we don't want that this old version get broadcasted. I will explain that. So this is how we represent graphically a payment channel. You have the balance of one side and the other. So it's state 1, commitment 0. So the commitment 0, state 1, is these two transactions. Each one gets their own. It's 0.5 to each. So commitment 0. Now imagine that Alice wants to send money to Bob. Okay, I don't know. For example, Bob made some moderation on the forum and he wants to get paid now. So how do you update the balance as to decrease what Alice had and Bob had? So the way of doing that is to do a new commitment. Commitment 1. The first one was commitment 0. The second one is commitment 1. And if you see well, it's not really, both are not really different. Okay, it's basically it's only the amount that changes, 0.4 and the 0.6. So they are kind of the same, except this part, Bob secret 2 and Alice secret 2. Why is that? It's because imagine, for example, that instead of this complicated script, we add Alice, only Alice. And imagine that it was the same here. Bob, no, Alice will be able to fraud. Imagine that the transaction were like that. Here, I cannot modify this slide. Too bad. But imagine here it was just Alice. Here it was just Bob and just Alice. The problem will be that Bob, if he wanted to fraud Alice, would be able to broadcast his old commitments. The old commitments, you remember, send 0.5 to him, while the new commitment should send him, Alice, sorry. The old commitment of Alice was sending back 0.5 to Alice. The new commitment sends 0.4. Imagine for a moment that Alice is malicious. What will prevent her to broadcast the old commitments? Remember, these transactions are not broadcasted. These transactions are broadcasted only to close the channel. So the problem we're trying to solve is how to prevent Alice from sending the old commitment where the balance was 0.5 for her. And the response is kind of easy, in fact. And thanks to check sequence verify, because without it, it will be a bit more complicated. But the simplest way to do that is when before a new commitment is done, Alice give Alice secret to Bob. So before doing this new commitment, Alice will send Alice to Bob. We call that we can call that the revocation ID of commitments, and they do their commitments. Now imagine that Alice tried to fraud Bob by broadcasting this one. Okay, she can still do it. They still have the old transaction. The problem is that now Bob knows about Alice's secret one. If Bob knows about secret one, it means that if Alice tries to broadcast it, then Bob can immediately get back to all the capacity of the payment channel. So basically, if she tried to broadcast that, Bob can get this 0.5, but he can also get this 0.5. So if Alice tried to fraud by sending an old version of the commitment, then Bob can get all the money of the channel. So it's basically a bad idea for Alice to try to fraud him. And it's where check sequence verify is very important. Because since Alice needs to wait 1 day to spend her money, it gives 1 day to Bob to react and see that Alice broadcasted it. and that you should better get all the money back before 1 day. So this is where verify importance. It basically gives 1 day for Bob to react of the closure of the channel and get back the money if Alice is malicious. Okay? It makes sense?
In this case, 2 transactions will be made.
Yes.
First one is like to make a secret one.
First one, once again.
First one will be like making if I'm Alice, I want to send money. I want to send the money to Bob. I'm making Alice secret, and then
the first transaction is the anchor one. It's to establish the payment channel. You know, there is the first transaction to open the payment channel is the anchor transaction. It's just sending money to this multisig. This is the first transaction. Second one is the commitments. But the commitment is not broadcasted until, no commitment is broadcasted until we close the channel. But you're right in the sense where, imagine that Alice broadcasts this one, it will be the second transaction to be broadcast on the network, so the payment channel will be closed. But if Bob see that it happened, Bob will say, okay, she tried to phone me, I will get all the money. So if he wants to do that, he needs to spend this coin, so it will be 1 more transaction. So basically in the case where there is a fraud going on, it will be 3 transactions. The anchor one to open the channel, for the closure of the channel, and the one that I would say I don't know if there is an, I think it's called escape transaction. I'm not sure about the terminology here, but basically it's Bob that flush back the money of the commitment to his own wallet. So 3 transactions. But Bob doesn't have to do that. If Alice play by the rule and Alice only send this commitment, then Bob doesn't care. He doesn't have to sweep any money at all. They just can keep their coin until they make an next payment later.
this is kind of credit card. Credit card.
Why?
I want to pay for you like for I don't know 1 day later, and then come out.
It's kind. Okay. I see what you're saying. Well, it's kind of different from so it's an interesting point in fact that you made, because it's not really like a debit card in the fact that both of them can close anytime. They don't have to wait until the end of the month, for example.
Yeah, but in fact, Bitcoin, maybe this sounds like credit card for me.
A little bit, yeah. It's kind of the same, but it's still off chain, because in this scheme nobody can get frauded. If someone wants just to cash out their Bitcoin, they can. So it's still off chain, but they own their coins. So there is a similarity with a credit card, in fact, because before check sequence verify was invented, what happened was that instead of 1 day of check sequence verify, you had the hard date here. So for example, end of the month. So it means that every month you needed to create a new payment channel. So it was the initial design with check log time sequence verify. But so the problem is that every channel will be open only, for example, 1 month. And if you close it, for example, 15 days before, as a 15 days before spending your coin. So it was a bit bothersome.
Okay.
So this scheme right now is kind of simple, because anybody can close when they want, And when they close the channel, they just need to wait 1 day. Okay, that's the only problem. Before object sequence verify, there was object load time verify. So instead of having a time span like that, we had a hard date. So for example, I want to create a payment channel with you, and I say, okay, let's close the channel the 13th March, for example. So, but if I need my money now, and I wanted to close the channel before, I could still close the channel. But the problem is that before spending my money, I would have to wait until 13 March. So it was still possible to do payment channel with object load time verify, but it's not very handy because you have to rebuild every time your channel and you have to wait after for spending it. Object sequence verify basically allow us to have a channel that can live for indefinite period of time. So it's very interesting because it means that you remember in the old, one of the old slide, in my old slide, there was some assumption about the scalability with 6 channels per year per user. But in reality, a channel can be open for 10 years. It doesn't matter. So that's why object sequence verify is very important. You don't have to recreate your channel every time.
今どういう質問でどういう理解されたかちょっと共有いただけますか。
僕の理解だと、なんか手形みたいなのを発行して、それを2人が OK できたら、それを支払うっていうような登録をしていて、でそれをでもクローズできる。でそれがクローズされないと、自分の気持ちの保有しているコインは使えないっていう。
Question, Jimmy?
I'm not catching up with this one. なんかその、何でしたっけ、絶対的な時間軸と相対的な時間軸と2つあったわけじゃないですか。だけど、そのどっちかが、最近相対的なやつが発言されたので、できるようになったことっていうのは、これなわけ。
So what is your question?
I was wondering, his question and his explanation and his understanding is probably understanding, therefore it's worth sharing. But I was not captain
about what about the check log time verify? It's basically there is the object there was another design for making a payment channel where instead of object sequence verify it was object log time verify. But if you change these conditions, it means that you need to wait. If you are Alice, you broadcast this transaction, it means that you will need to wait until the expiration to be able to spend your coin. And the expiration, if you close the channel after today and the expiration is in 30 days, you need to wait 30 days. So it's problematic. And also, if you did that in the initial, you see in the initial contracts, right now, in the initial contract, you only negotiate the capacity and the revocation period. If you were doing it with log time verify, you will need the capacity and the expiration. So for example, every month we expirate the channel, and every month we build a new one. It's still possible, but it's kind of bothersome because you would have to wait too much if you want to spend the coin that you earn in the channel.
So this way you can spend it any time, but you just wait 1 day.
Right.
As a verification.
Right. Correct.
いつでも送金できますけれども、CSP でいつでも送金できるけど、送金した後に例えば1日 待って、それから、また送金できる。使える。そのお金を使います。チェック、チェックタイムベリファイ。
Well, yeah,
が、
check lock time verify.
チェックタイムベリファイが、例えば、2月26日、金曜日までは使えないという、絶対的な日程とか、それをいつでも送金できないことになります。ここまで待って、それから送金できる。
チャンネルの使い回しができるということなんですが、その相対的な、絶対的なやつだと、送金しようとするたびにチャンネル作らなきゃいけない。それはもう手続きが決まってるから。でも相対的なやつだと、1日にとかになってるから、1日にっていう条件なので、何回でもそのチャンネルに使い回しができる。
So do you have to create the channel every time with upseas fee, or?
So you can create it one time, and if you close it, then you need to create a new one.
Okay.
But if you don't close it, you can keep it for 10 years.
upseas fee で、別にチャンネルが開いたら、そのままで使えますけど、閉じたら、新しいの作れないとダメですけど、オンチェーンに戻ったら、また作ります。Object Time Verify が、upseas fee は1日の確認、期間の、前に決まります。だから、これが1回チャンネルを開いたら、100年でも使えます。
1回チャンネルを確立したら、何回でもそのチャンネル上でお金をやるという。
そうです、はい。
その絶対的なやつしかないと、チャンネルを毎回作り直さなきゃいけない。
そうですね、タイムラックベリファイが、例えば、1ヶ月後にチャンネルを作るときに1ヶ月のに設定して、それが、1ヶ月後もう使えなくなります。だから新しいチャンネルを作れないと。もうこれで1回だけを開いて、自由に使えるようになります。
チャンネルを作るっていうのはコストのかかるんですか？めんどくさいんですか？
いや、ブロックチェーン上に、このマルチシグの、ブロックチェーン上じゃないけど、マルチシグの、取引を作ります。めんどくさいと思います。多分コストはないと思う。To create the channel, there's no cost, right? Because you're creating
one
the
Bitcoin transaction.
But the transaction's off-chain?
The Anchor transaction is not here. Anchor, you have to
So you have
to
to broadcast it. So that's with the capacity.
But you can bundle, if you want, you can bundle a creation with a destruction of the channel. So, for example, you can, well, no, it's kind of complicated. Let's say one transaction for opening, one transaction for closing.
Is this 2/2?
Yes. Yes. The Anchor transaction is a payment to the multisig. Then the commitments are trying to spend this multisig and distributing to Alice and Bob. So yes, it's 2/2.
It has to be one by one because
It has one.
it has to be one and one by one.
Yes.
Always Alice.
Yes.
Alice to Bob. So
Yes.
Alice to Bob, it's a contract between Alice and Bob, that's why 2/2,
Right.
and it cannot be cheated due to CSV.
Right.
なんかアリスとボブの間の契約なわけですよね。なんで、その2人のサインで、その2人のサインするので、そのチートができないんです。
But there is not only one cheat that is possible. There is this second cheat where you have two commitments, but the old one give more money that should be to one of the party. How do you prevent Alice from broadcasting that? The response is that every time you make a new commitment, reveal the secrets. So if Alice tried to broadcast outdated commitments, then Bob can just steal all the money. Because Bob knows that, Bob can sign, so Bob can get the money. So there is two kinds of fraud that is protected.
The once channel is closed, this transaction will be closed.
It's by broadcasting it that you close it.
Oh.
It's not you close it and then you broadcast. It's you broadcast and it closes it. So indeed, your channel have three states. There is a created state where the anchor is confirmed on the blockchain. There is so the created state, and there is a closing state. So the closing is when your commitment is inside the block. Then you have the closed states where this is on the block and you have waited for this one to expire. So and then it's really closed. Okay.
Yeah, but I can not come up.
Yes, but it's not for this usage. It's a building block for what's go after. It was the same question with object sequence. I don't see why it's useful. It's useful for that, but I don't see why it's useful for that. And now it comes up why it's useful. So basically, payment bidirectional payments is on top of object sequence verify and SegWit. And on top of it, we have an interesting application that is called Payment Hub and Lightning Network. And this is what allows us to scale at a massively. The idea of Payment Hub is very simple. There is almost nothing to explain if you understood the payment channel. It's simply people who create payment channel between each others, and on the way there is some trusted party, and I say trusted, I will tell you why. But I call it off-chain, nevertheless. You will understand why, because they have limited power to steal your money. But basically, you have, for example, here, two payment channels. So this blue thing and this blue thing. Lots of people connect to it directly with a payment channel. And imagine now that Alice wants to send money to Bob. Okay? So if you want to do that, Alice will pay the money to the hub, which will pay to the second hub, which will pay finally to Bob. So basically, here are all the balances inside the payment channel. If you want to pay Bob, you pay the channel, which pays this one, which pays with this one. So it's just a payment which through like that. Okay. So in this example, Alice lost -5, Bob earned +5, and those are the payment hub. Nothing really changed for them. They just routed the money. Maybe they took some fees, but it's up to them. So, well, if we do that, lots of people are connecting to this payment hub, then we can start having completely off-chain payment system, but it's not very. There's some kind of problem that comes up with that. One of the problems is that you have to trust all intermediary inside from the start to the destination. It means that Alice, I will put like this slide. Alice has to trust this guy to not keep the money. But I will argue that it's how the financial system works today. If I want to make a wire transfer from France to Japan, then my bank pay another middle bank, which pay another central bank, with bundled to your Japanese accounts. So it's kind of how the financial system works actually. But well, we are in Bitcoin. We like the decentralized aspects, so it's not good enough. The payment hub are money transmitters, which is problematic because if they are payment transmitters, then they are liable to lots of regulation. Payment hub needs lots of reserve. Why do they need lots of reserve? We can see it very easily in the graph. To allow the payment to flow through, they need some money on their part of the channel. So if you make an addition of everyone that is connected, it's a lot of money that is locked by the payment hub. which is kind of problematic. They need lots of reserve to operate. But I mean, it's a bit like the current financial system works, so it's not so bad. And payments channel are also a systemic risk in the sense that imagine there is one that everybody connect to. If we release we stop this one, then suddenly the network can become disrupted because the payment cannot flow through. Until you can see it like when there was a crisis in Greece. If you have a Greece bank account and you wanted to do a wire transfer in Japan, you could not because the bank on the middle just had problems. So payment hubs are also a systemic risk. So there's kind of problem with this design, but it's simple. I mean, it's simple and it's not worse than what we have today. What if we can achieve something like that? It's a bit of an anarchy, but the idea will be, can I connect just to some people who I don't trust and just flow the payments between them? So that's what basically Lightning Network wants to do. It's the goal of the Lightning Network, to flow payments without having the problem of the payment hub. So this is ultimately the question that Lightning Network responds. How can Alice pay Bob through Jim without trusting Jim? So imagine that Jim is a bad guy. He should have no way whatsoever to steal Alice and Bob money. Not only that, but Bob must have no way to steal Jim. So basically, it's the response to what should be done to make Lightning Network works. And it works with what we call hash time locked contracts. I put the link to the PDF which explains in way more depth. I will try to explain it here, but I don't, frankly, I expect you to get it a little bit now, but frankly, you have to sleep on it to fully integrate. Myself, it took me a while to understand that. So I will present it to you, but I don't expect you to get it at the first time. So let's start by this example. Alice and Jim have a payment channel. Jim and Bob have a payment channel. They have some reserve on it. Given the state of the balance, we can derive the all the commitments. So let's start first. How Alice can send the money to Jim, so Jim can send the money to Bob without Jim. So our first state, it was, sorry, I will put it back. So our first state is 70-30, okay? Commitment 0. Between Alice and Jim, commitment 0. So I made a mistake. By the way, here it's not 1, it's 100, okay? And, okay, basically, this is the current state as we have learned just before with the payment channel. Okay, 70-30, 70-30. So here is how Alice will send the money to Jim. And I'm simplifying a little bit because this script normally is more complex. If I have time, I will explain why, but at least you get the idea. So what Alice will do is she will create a new commitment, and she will say, I will pay 5, so her balance will be reduced by 5, and I will pay to Bob's secrets, so a secret that only Bob knows that is needed, and to Jim. So if Jim knows the Bob secrets and is Jim, then he can just get this coin. So I give that to Jim. I create my new commitments. I reflected the commitment of Jim because you remember every time you do a new commitment, you have basically 2 transactions. one that is for Alice and one that is for Jim. So this commitment is done. Then once this is done, this one needs to be done also. So between Jim and Bob, it's 2050. So 2050, we start by this state. So 2050, we start by this state. And basically what Jim will say, okay, Bob, I will pay you 5. So I will remove 5 from my balance, from Jim balance. And he say to Bob, I will pay you 5 if you know the Bob secret one. Obviously, Bob knows the secrets. If it happens that Bob broadcasts these commitments, Bob will reveal on the blockchain what is Bob's secret one. So imagine that Bob broadcasts commitment 1, then Jim will learn about Bob's secret one, then Jim can just get back the money of Alice here. So once again, the new commitment between, so there was a commitment between Alice and Jim, here it's between Jim and Bob. And the condition is for Bob, you need the Bob secrets plus the signature of Bob to get 5, to send the 5 to Bob. If Bob tries to broadcast that and spend his 5 Bitcoin here, basically we'll reveal the secret to everybody on the blockchain. It will be public information. If it's public information, at Eastern, Jim can pull out the money from Alice's channel. Because you remember, Jim commitments is here, Alice is here, and here you can get the 5 Bitcoin if you know the Bob secret, and it's Jim. So actually, this script is a little bit more complicated in practice. I try to simplify it, but basically there is also an expiration. Imagine that there is normally also 1 day of CSV for Jim. So if the channel expires, if Alice tries to fraud, you can get back this money still. And there is also a timeout of the payments. I don't want to go too far into it before, because it's still difficult to understand like that. So, like that, by doing that, at no point Jim can be stolen. So right now, if this one is broadcasted, then Bob will need to send the secret. If Bob needs to send the secret to get his money, then Jim can do also to get the money from Alice. But imagine that there is another payment like that. The problem is that there will be more and more outputs that will be added to the transaction. So after you have you can do a new commitment, which we call, for cleaning a little bit this mess of the pending payments. Which looked like so between Alice and Jim. Myself by doing the slide. Oh no, okay, so it's easy. So at commitment 1, we can see all the commitments. They all have this pending payment of 5 here. So between Alice and Jim, there is this 5, and between Jim and Bob, there is this 5 and 5. But now we can clean that. We can say we can create a new commitment, so it will be commitment 2 this time, so the third one. And basically, what it does is very simple. It takes this 5 here, okay? This 5 here, and it just add that to Bob balance. Okay, so if I, for example, Jim commitment 2, now Bob have 55. So it's just a matter of condensing all these extra outputs that were added to the commitments. And now, if you want to visualize that on a simple payment channel, we have done our payments. So basically, Alice had 70 before. Now she has 65, so minus 5. Jim has plus 5 on his port. But here, he lost his 5 on his part of the channel and then sent 5 to Bob. So finally speaking, Alice managed to send money to Bob, to Jim, in a trustless way. So without any possibility for him to get stolen and without any possibility for Alice and Bob to get stolen. So now we can have a network of people which connect to one another and that just can pass around the payment like that, and without acting as trust centers.
これは5ビットコインを送るのに、ジムの時は1日間だけ10ビットコインをロックされちゃう感じなんですか。5ビットコインの中継をするのに、5ビットコインをそれぞれのチャンネルごとに使えなくするんですよね。
ただジムのビットコインの数は変わってないわけですよね。そのプレゼント株がそのアリスとジムとジムと僕の間にできているので、それはオフチェーンで、そのオフチェーンでそのプレゼント株があるので、こういうことができてしまう。
すごく理解できないんですけど、5ビットコインを中継するのに、ジムは少なくとも10ビットコインを持ってなければいけないとかあるんですか。
His question is, Alice sent 5 to Bob, but it's via Jim. So does Jim need to have 10 or 20? If Jim has 0 Bitcoin, it's not possible.
It's a very good question. And yes, indeed, if for example, Bob had 0 here, then Alice could not send the payments through. So he's right on this part. And if it happened, then you need to create a new channel with a better capability. Yes.
So does Jim, what is the minimum requirement for Jim? Is it 5 or 10? So
right now, you see, we are this state at first. So if the maximum that Alice can send to Bob in this example is 30 Bitcoin, because Jim will become 0 here, and no, it's 20, and it's 20 the minimum. Sorry, because this will reach 0 and 70. So the minimum, the maximum that Alice can pay to Bob is the minimum of the amount that are in the pass.
So if Jim does not meet minimum requirements, does Alice need to find another pass?
Another pass.
やっぱり今ご指摘あったように、そのジムがある程度アマウントがないと、その中継にはなれないです。もし10ビットコイン必要なんですか。
Question. いいですか。Yeah, I think that Jim is like an internet router, so at least can find and several paths to the Bob. So we need some routing protocol of the networks, right?
Right.
What is that protocol? That is a new protocol, and this can be decentralized or not?
So this is a good question, and one I don't have the answer in because I'm not. So I know about the theory behind Lightning Network, but I'm not working very concentratedly on here now. And I think it's an open question right now, actually. I know that the problem of routing in a more or less trustless way is partially solved with BGP protocol, like routing protocol that are existing right now, but right now it still need to be developed. It's not finished right now. There is up to work still. And there is also another point where people are working on is that if you're on the path, you can know that there is some information leak where Jim can deduce that Alice sent money to Bob. So there is also that part on privacy that is unclear for now, and that need to be fixed also.
まあ、多分そのジムにあるそのなんていうんですか、要件に出さないと機能しないですと。それはジムダメだった場合、他のを探さなきゃいけないですと。ただそこについてはまだそのフィックスしてなくて、まだそこはそのこれから解決されるような、まあ、ルーティングできるようなプロトコルがこれから開発されるでしょう。I guess that then they need to be fixed. You said that it's a still open question.
Yeah. Well, the people who work on Lightning Network is very decentralized. There's the mailing list of Lightning Network where everybody communicates. There's IRC, but there's really lots of people that are trying to work and figure that out. And right now it's a bit of an anarchy. Everybody is trying to do their own stuff, then they communicate and try to normalize a bit. So we don't know when. It's nobody knows.
CSV and Segregated partially solve the Lightning Network. It's a partially part of the Lightning Network.
Yes.
It consists of 10 and half, but it's still not complete. I mean, so there's still missing parts here.
So the routing aspect is missing. So the routing aspect is not clear because here it's simple. Okay, you know to send money from Alice to Bob, but as it was explaining to you, if on the pass here the maximum capability of the pass is 20, so it's problematic. And if we have a big network like that, then you need a routing protocol to find the pass until the destination. And this is something that is still to be developed, and I think there is some kind of reason, but it's not very clear right now.
It's basically the same as liquidity problems in real-time reverse-level systems.
It's some kind of problem also?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's heuristic algorithms used to optimize.
I think they will not reinvent the wheel, and they will use something like that.
I don't see a better solution as long as you have to go through these intermediaries.
Yeah, I think maybe in 1 year, 2 years they will be. I think they one group that wanted to release already Lightning networks working later this year, but I don't expect it. Frankly, I don't expect it to be ready for.
Payment channel easier than Lightning Network. Payment hub.
Yeah, payment hub are easier. Harder, legally speaking. So it's kind of a trade-off. It's easier, technically speaking, they're both more complicated, legally speaking.
Okay. Because I have some sympathy for his question. So now I understand the bottom layer. We have two significant protocol improvements. But upper layer, it's still not, we do not achieve this upper layer application.
Yeah, but
yet.
it's only a technical question. Once object sequence and SegWit are merged, there is nothing that prevents to solve this problem. So my point is that object sequence and SegWit, once it's done, the rest is only technical details. And people will just bang their head against the wall for some time, but eventually the wall will break before the head, hopefully. But at one point, I think it will be fixed. But yet, it needs some research here.
おそらくそのセグリットでその解決するところってバリアビリティとあとそのブロックサイズじゃないですか。CSV である程度対面パブだったりオフチェーントランザクションだったり解決するんですけど、だけどライトニングネットワークまでは到達しないですと。ライトニングネットワークまで到達するには さっきご指摘されたところが解決される必要があって、そこは今まだですね。一応ブロックストリームの中にそれやってる人たち何人かいるんですけど、それは割とそのフリーでやってる人もいれば、結構あちこちにライブイベントが取り組んでる人たちがいるので、まだいつフィックスするとも言えなくてって感じだと思います。
There was some, just for information, there was some nice, well, I just want to point out of what we managed to do is at cloud time contract outputs, misconditions. So I simplified a bit the problem because there is two ways. As I explained it now, there is still ways for Jim to steal the money or to get stolen. But I wanted to simplify the explanation because it's still complicated. So I tried to simplify a bit. But an important thing, Jimmy don't have custody of the money, so he's not liable to any regulation. And Jim does not have to trust Alice and Bob, so it cannot be stolen at all. I wanted to show there was some nice.
Please imagine if Jim, the intermediary Jim has a lot of reserve, then it's going to work.
Yes.
So is it voluntary if some enthusiasts raise their hands to be such intermediary?
Well, so it's a nice question because I simplified the question, but in Lightning Network, the intermediary can ask some fees. Okay, and the question is, what is the right fee for him? And the response is, the more reserve they have, the more fees they will ask for having so much money locked. So it's an economic question after. How much money are you ready to block? But most of this money is not really blocked because you can also use this money to make a payment yourself on the network. So it's the end result is it's not easy to make profit by being a hub on Lightning Network because you have to lock reserves.
Is the intermediary individual or professional entity? Or
If you have a Lightning Network wallet, then you will be a node. So everybody that will have his own Lightning Network wallet will act as an intermediary for all other people.
Can I get some reward to be a Lightning Network?
You can.
ライトネットワークのノードって、例えば、なんていうんですか、すごいリザーブがあれば機能するわけじゃないですか。それっていうのが、ライトネットワークのノードになることで、フィーがもらえますと。
利息みたいなもんだと思うんですかね。
まあ、なんか、マイナー、トランザクションフィー、マイナーみたいなもんだと思うんですかね。マイナーなマイナー。
リザーブ持ってれば勝手に増えていく。少しずつ。
It sounds like proof of stake.
What?
Because if I have a huge reserve, I will get many fees.
Well, people won't maybe pay you because if you lock lots of money, then this money that you have blocked is not working for something else. So you're losing some money that you need to catch up with fees. But some people might be able to compete with you on the fees. So the question is, it's not evident that by being a router you can make lots of money. It's an economic question.
If I have a huge reserve to be a Lightning Network node.
But if I want to buy a cup of coffee of 5 cents, why do I need to use you as an intermediary for 5 cents? I can use someone that have not so much reserve and that ask me very few fees.
Another question: if this Mazi Alice and Bob, how do they choose Jim if they have plenty of choices?
So that's the routing protocol, and I don't personally know how it works right now, and it's still open to debate. So it's not a fixed problem yet.
After like a daily basis question.
Yeah.
So in that way, is existing for like segregated
Jim, oh, sorry, once again.
Ice and Bob and Jim.
Yes.
This guy is existing for security.
No, it's because imagine that no intermediary were needed. The problem will be that if you are, for example, if we have all the people in this room, if I wanted to trade with everybody, I need to create a payment channel with everybody. Well, everybody. So it's very costly in terms of transaction. That's why that instead of that, I prefer connect to you and you connect to some people, and then only with one channel, I can pay everybody in the room. It's a combination of program, yeah. There is AG, it's a developer that is working on, I don't know what to say it. Why we don't see it? 1 second. Duplicate. So there is AJ, one of the developers around Lightning Network, we made a small graphic of a lab example. So he developed, he's developing Lightning Network related stuff, and he made a small laboratory experience where there is 1 to 6 nodes all interconnected, and it's just a video that shows every pass, for example, when it's read. So for example, here you have a pass from A to E, and the payment flow through. The number you see that is exactly the number that were on my slides. It's reserves, it's coins that are inside the channel. So we made a small simulation like that. It's kind of nice to see. And yeah, it's called coffee con because every time it's a coffee payment. So it's still not ready for consumer consumption, but it's possible. It's definitely possible, and this will allow Bitcoin to reach Visa scale. So it's very important. Like I said, as an example, the current debate about the 2 megabyte blockchain is like the Smiths and the self-fisher that are fighting on the fish that smell bad. So it's very inconsequential compared to our fights to the Roman Empire. So I think I reached everything.
イベントでなんていうんですかね、1メガバイトのブロックサイズリミットあるじゃないですか。2メガだ、4メガだ、8メガだ、20あったわけですね。それをやっていくと、まあ確かに会議になるんですけど、そのブロックチェーンのサイズはでかくなっちゃいますと。だけどそれではなくて、やっぱりブロックチェーンによるライトニングネットワークが真にスケールする道だっていうことで、そのハード、そのコアデベロッパーたちはこっちに注力してますと。そういうことで、まあ難しい判断だと思うんですけど、ライトニングネットワークはその完成はしてないので、ただそのコアデブがその本質的な会だと思ってのはやっぱこっちです。
Okay, so is there any question that are left? So I managed to cover everything. Frankly speaking, I don't expect you to have everything understood and just naturally like that. For me, it took several nights to get my mind across it. But it's the first time you see it. The second time you will see it, you will understand quicker, and after a while, it will be you won't even think about it. But the principle is always that we have some building blocks that are the Bitcoin protocol operation that nobody talk about that are very important. And then on top of that, you have the payment channel, and from the payment channel, you have all kind of stuff that can be built upon it. So that's about it. Yeah. Yep.
I can understand like Lightning, how Lightning network is, but how this is related to blockchain and
On custody.
On custody? On custody.
Yeah, you mean my first slide on outcome base?
That's right, because I cannot have an image. I thought, okay, blockchain means maybe block size will be much more cheaper, much more small, and then like for the blockchain, maybe I can have a for the blockchain on iPhone. If I want my image, but
Off-chain really means that when you do a payment, for example, when this payment happens, no transaction were broadcast. So it's why we call it blockchain. The transfer of money from Alice to Bob never had one transaction on the network. I mean, there was one transaction to open this channel and this channel, but for really the payment from Alice to here, nothing has been broadcasted.
okay, so in total, like blockchain will.
Yes. Well, here there can be 10 billion transactions between them. Nothing will hit the blockchain. The only cost of doing that is one transaction here and one transaction here. And if you want to get back your money, for example, you want to close the channel, I don't know for what reason, maybe Jim is unresponsive, so you want to close the channel, it will cost you one transaction. But what makes it scalable is that it does not depend on the number of transactions. You can have 10 billion transactions passing through here, it will still be 2 transactions. So it's what makes it scalable. And I think, frankly speaking, sometimes people say, let's try to check other chain to not have this scalability issue, but I think all cryptocurrency will eventually have the same problem as Bitcoin. The problem is that if you have one transaction to do, you have an enormous cost across all around the nodes that need to be paid somewhere. And I think this will have always a cost that will be impacted either as mining fees, either as service fees, we don't know, either as regulation maybe, because I don't know, maybe there will be some subsidiaries to process the transaction, I don't know. But really, like the network, when you do a Lightning Network transaction, the only people it impacts is you and the intermediary, not the whole world. And it's what makes it scalable. And I think that even if you are using another altcoin, it will still be needed to have a sort of a layer on it. Greg Maxwell made a nice analogy about that. Greg Maxwell said, people who want the 2 megabytes are like if they wanted to pull out a rock on the moon with a trebuchet. You know, they try to make a bigger trebuchet to just propel the rock into space. But no matter how big the trebuchet you make, even if it's, I don't know, if it's 30 megabytes block, the trebuchet won't reach the space. If you want to reach the space, you need multi-stage rockets to do it. And I think it was a fun analogy, but it's really true in this case. You need an upper layer to achieve this kind of scalability. Okay, is there any other question?
I want to hear your opinion. I want to. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay. I want to hear your opinion about the round table consensus, but some Coinbase or the Zappo, the major commercial players still support on the Bitcoin Classic and make hard fork as soon as possible. How do you think?
On my side, the only thing I can say is that anyway, even if Lightning Network exists, a bump in block size will be needed. I mean, we can support 8 million people. It's still not enough. So does a hard fork need to happen? I would say yes, it will happen one day. I think everybody kind of agree with that. This is not the problem. My problem with Classic is that they are trying to push that with 75% of mining support. And also, they are trying to make it seem like a lot of the community support them when it's not true. Actually, it's a small minority vocal community that try to push that through, but it's not a majority. And My only complaint with Classic is in two ways. 75% of mining support. I think it should be 95, and I think it will be possible with 95. I think it will not block something. And my second problem is that since you need to update all the users of the network, I think it needs at least 1 year to activate. But basically, I am for the 2 megabytes. I am against all the FUD that have been said against the core team that are, for the major part, a team of volunteers that doesn't get paid for what they do, and lots of shit has been thrown at them, and I don't support that. But 2 megabyte will happen, I think. I don't know if it will be next year or in 2 years. I don't think it's urgent, because segregated witness will just bump the block size as the domains grow. So it's not very urgent, but it needs to be done. So I just hope it will be done with minimal blood in the streets. That's all. Does it respond to your question?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. There was another question? Yeah.
チェーンは基本的なことが改ざんできないから安全ということですけども、オフチェーンの場合、フリップなトランザクションとかそういうのがないわけですよね。そういう状態でどうやって安全性を確保しているんですか？
まあ、安全性はトランザクションを証明していますので、そのシグネチャー証明があるので改ざんできないです。So he's asking about why are off-chain transactions safe? It's because use cryptography to sign the transactions.
Yeah, it's safe because Jim, in this particular example, if Jim is malicious, Bob is. If Jim
by safe, I mean can't be changed. So one of the reasons why Bitcoin is special is because once you put a transaction, you can't change it later.
Yes.
And so he's wondering how that works in off-chain transactions.
Well, in off-chain transaction, this predicate is not violated. It still holds. The important part of off-chain is that nobody can steal another money.
Well, sure.
I guess it's still too much signature. So it's once initiated, it's going to be it's on the blockchain. But it's off-chain transaction for a while, and eventually it's closed. It's closed to its blockchain, right?
Yes, right.
そのオフチェーンって言ってるんですけど、なんていうんですかね、ブロックチェーンにすべて載ってるわけですよね。アリスと僕のジムの間のマルチシグネチャーで、小さなスマートコントラクトが始まりましたと。でその間、いろいろ起きてることがオフチェーンで起きていて、で最後、2of2のコントラクトが終わったのはまたブロックチェーンで終わるので、なので、一応ブロックチェーンで完結はしてるわけですね。ただその間、期間があって、なんていうんですか、オフチェーンで契約が進行している時間軸を。
I think I kind of understand the goal of this question, because the first thing I ask myself is, if multi-network works, why do we need a blockchain at all? And it's a question that bothered me at the first time, but the response is that what makes this commitment transaction worthwhile, that give value to this transaction, is that the coin they're spending, it's a real coin on the blockchain. If it was not, then there will be no value on that. So maybe it was
ビットコインのなんていうんですかね、トランザクションがすべてブロックチェーン上で完結してるわけですね。最初言った自分が言ったカストディとオフチェーンってやつは、カストディってやつはとはいってもトラステッドサードパーティーに預けるわけですよ。なのでチェンジリップだってマンボックスだって誰かがプライベートキー持って彼らのトランザクションですと。だけど今言ったオフチェーントランザクションはすべてブロックチェーンの上で完結していて、TPP に頼る必要はないので、なので、やっぱりオフチェーントランザクションとして、でしかもチートできないっていうか、ビットコインの責任がちゃんと明確になっていて、サードパーティーがチートしたときには、取引自体が行われないんですよね。オアで そのチートできないように書いてるんですよ。なので、まあ、よく聞くと、なんかできそうだなっていう感じがします。たださっき、言われてたように、なんか一日で理解できるような訓練があって、まあ、いろいろ考えてると、なんかある日、パズルがはまるみたいな感じで、ああ、なるほど。そんな感じ。
結局、ビットコイアとか、これデータって交換で
ブロックチェーンが必要ですよね。
結局サードパーティーを払う、挟まってるのはどっかレシピで挟んで考えると、あんま現実的ないなってちょっと思って。
There's nothing Jim. Does Jim need full nodes or it's really possible?
It's a good question that I forgot. It's a point that I forgot to mention. It's a good question. So here in this example, so it's a one part why SegWit is very important. In fact, it's because without SegWit, the problem is that Jim needs to be a full node and observe the blockchain by himself. So he cannot delegate this task to anybody. Why is that? Is that if you don't fix the malleability, you have a big problem because as Jim, you you know that Jim has this transaction, and you know that if it's trying to send a node one, no, it's not this one. Imagine that he's sending a node commitment, for example, this one. You know that if he's trying to cheat you, you can just sign a transaction that spends and satisfy this condition, get back your money. The problem is that if you don't fix malleability, you don't know what is the transaction of the ID of this one. So without malleability fixed, you need to observe yourself the blockchain, and if you witness this transaction, then you can get back your money. But since malleability is fixed, Jim, so Alice, Jim, and Bob don't have to be full node. They can just say to some service or to several service, if you see this transaction ID, then forward this transaction.
In this case, it sounds like another like a private blockchain.
Why?
Yeah, because Korean can't cheat it like among Alice, Jim, and Bob. Because transaction will be made on pass and trust. Then among like this creation,
Yeah,
if people can cheat,
nobody can cheat.
no.
Because for creating a new commitment, you always need the signature of your other peer. So every time you create a new commitment, the both party of the payment channel need to sign it. So you cannot just create whatever you want. And also you don't need the old commitment. You know, if you are a commitment 2, you don't need to remember about the previous one.
But this one that can be used, can be used as a comment. Okay, I want to pay with this one because this one cannot confirm.
So
like, I mean,
it depends on these 2 points. If the one that you are paying is on the Lightning Network, what is very important also with Lightning Network is that all payments are instant. There is no confirmation. So payment with Lightning Network is you don't have to wait in confirmation, because if someone sends an old transaction or old commitment, then money can be stolen. So in your case, imagine that you have a store that accepts Bitcoin, but is on the Lightning Network, and you can just use the Lightning Network. But if they are not on the Lightning Network, and it's maybe why you say it's like there's 2 chains, because there's two types of Bitcoin you can accept. There's the Bitcoin you can accept on the Lightning Network, or the Bitcoin you can accept from the blockchain, right? And
so it again is tweaking on like this Lightning Network, kind of.
So if he's on the Lightning Network, he will accept your payments, no problem. If he's not, and you have and all your phones are locked, then in this case you need to close one of your channels, whatever it is. Back your money and send it.
Does this mean I don't like the guy? This is sidechain.
But it's still Bitcoin because you can come back in Bitcoin. Those commitments that are not broadcasted are still real Bitcoin.
Yeah,
you can close the channel.
Yeah, I mean, like, so sidechain is not necessary anymore.
Yeah.
Because this sounds like, okay, if Bitcoin can be confirmed immediately, sidechain is not necessary anymore.
I think so, but sidechain, there is interesting thing with sidechain that can be experiment on the crypto level. And for example, one of the sidechain that is called Element from Blockstream has interesting feature, for example, about correct coins. So this system of Lightning Network and payment channel is doable also for its correct coins, but there is some technical problem where you need for running as trustless, you need all the history of a coin. And it's kind of problematic, and the only way to fix that is having a side chain.
Okay, so if
they
it's
still
only for like using money, it's fine, but if I understand it kind of right,
yes.
You need to use a side chain.
I think sidechain will have some interesting innovation into it. There was Greg Maxwell that did a cool video on the Blockstream page where he explained what it is developing on. For example, confidential transactions, a way to pay someone without and fixing the fungibility of Bitcoin. So this kind of stuff for now is done on a side chain. Maybe some people are researching to do it as a soft fork of Bitcoin. Maybe it will be possible, I don't know. But sidechain allows some certain features that for now can be added on Bitcoin. Adding a feature on Bitcoin is complicated. Adding a feature on a sidechain is easy. It's a nice way to make more experimentation. Why not fracture? It's interesting because it does not fracture Bitcoin. Because since sidechain are pegged Bitcoin, it's not like the crypto community is fractured. It's you can put your Bitcoin on the sidechain and then recover it later. So it's still interesting, but for the immediate payments, for every network is the way to go, not sidechain.
じゃあ、大体いいでしょう。他に質問ありますか？Do you like to briefly talk about Metaco?
Well, very briefly, if you want, yeah. So my company is called Metaco. I'm the CTO of Metaco. It's a Switzerland company. Basically, we are working on correct coins. So all I presented you, for example, on everything. Correct coin is a principle to transmit assets other than Bitcoin on the blockchain. And basically, Metaco is very interested into all of that because we can use Payment Hub to transmit fiat currencies via the blockchain, and with a high scaling in a high scaling way. So that's basically the only thing I have time to present. So that's all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
今日の説明でブロックチェーンのビットコインが進歩するっていうのが分かると思うんですよ。なんでやっぱりブロックチェーンで一番よく狙われててよく考えられているアプリケーションがビットコインで、この周りにその開発リソースも集中していて、新しいプロトコルもできていて、できるようになって、いろんなことができるようになりつつあって、その開発リソースがやっぱ潤沢だなと。で、そのスケールするだろうし、その問題もいろいろあるけれども、その問題についていろんな人たちが 取り組みつつあるなというのが、自分の感想で、なので正直やっぱりビットコインとブロックチェーンが本命だなと思ってて、でカラードコインもあればサイドチェーンもあれば、いろいろあるなと思います。